Hello, everyone. This is Gary Ludwig. I am the immediate past chair of the EMS section for the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And here we are with another Fire Rescue Med podcast. And we're going to be talking about some of the sessions that are being held at Fire Rescue Med this year. And I am privileged to have as my host today is Dr. Reed Smith, who is the Operational Medical Director for the Arlington County Fire Department, and he's also the co-chair of the Committee for Tactical Emergency Casualty Care. And Dr. Smith is going to be one of our presenters at Fire Rescue Med this year, which is going to be held in our nation's capital in Arlington, Virginia from April 30th to May 3rd. And this coincidentally occurs at the same time with the Congressional Fire Service Dinner. So if you're coming to the dinner, we would love to see you also come to Fire Rescue Med. And if you are coming to Fire Rescue Med, you can also go to the dinner. And so this is an excellent time to learn, socialize, and network. But let's turn right now to Dr. Smith, and we're going to talk about what he's going to be talking about at Fire Rescue Med, which is active shooters. It's basically a paradigm shift in active shooter responses and the high threat responses that we have to deal with these days. And it seems like every time we open up in our newspapers or turn on our TVs, we see there's another active shooter. So I'm going to, again, welcome Dr. Smith. And Dr. Smith, why don't you say hello to our listening audience?
Well, hello. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak. I'm very excited about this conference. It looks like just a fantastic conference, and it's right in my backyard, so it makes it easy for me to get to. But really looking forward to having you guys in town.
Well, and we know that the Arlington County Fire Department is providing some of our host stuff there, like the Honor Guard and some other things, and we're deeply appreciative for that, Dr. Smith.
Great.
So with that said, tell me about this new active shooter thing. You know, I remember, hearing about this stuff 20 years ago, but it just seems like it's filling our newspapers nowadays. So what's happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little bit of what I like to call awareness bias. Essentially, is that it's something we're now paying attention to, but really, when you look at the history of active shooter, this is not a new phenomenon. And the first true active shooter that you could, according to the classification that is used now, and the definition by Homeland Security and by the FBI, really was the Texas Tower shooter in the 1960s. We look at, and so we've had active shooters again and again and again since then, but only recently, and I think it's the big events such as Columbine and Virginia Tech and then Newtown that really have brought these to the forefront of our knowledge, as well as some of the just horrific. The media is very good at kind of showing the anguish and how horrific these things are. But you're right. What's interesting is as the public becomes more aware of these, they become more common. There is some copycat phenomenon. There is, and we're actually starting to see some change in these as well. I mean, just 2 days ago we had the knife attack, which is not an active shooter, but it's certainly a high threat event, and it's certainly a mass casualty event, and your response is exactly the same. And so, we're seeing this. We're seeing it definitely is more common. Even the data actually shows that it's more common as well. The key, when we talk about paradigm shift in active shooter and high threat response, so response to explosives and things along those lines, is it's knowledge. Knowledge is power, and we can learn from the history because there's a perception of what is going on in these things, and the perception is driven by what we're aware of. And unfortunately, the only events that we're really aware of are these big events, which typically are outliers. So, Newtown, Columbine, Virginia Tech, these are really outliers. And so as the fire service starts to look at how to respond or what the fire service role is in these, you have to know what's going on, and you have to look historically. And that's one of the things that I'll talk about is some of the historical aspects of active shooter that, based on the data of 230, an analysis of 230 events, here's what we're seeing, and here's the reality of what we're seeing. So, don't be so skewed by the outliers. Let's look at really what happens in the vast majority of these things. Additionally, there's a fair amount of medicine out there that, from an EMS, fire rescue EMS perspective, that it comes to bear, and there's some phenomenal evidence that's driving paradigm change because we know medically what is going to happen to these people as they're injured and what happens if we don't get in there and help them. And so there's some very strong evidence-based medical evidence that will tell us what we need to do, and it kind of helps to prove the point that we shouldn't be standing back.
So you're saying, Dr. Smith, is basically the days of us sitting in a staging area and waiting for the scene to be cleared, are you saying that's basically over with now?
I am. I think that there's a shift in what the public perception is, and what I like to say to my guys here in Arlington is that our true boss is the citizen, and citizen, the court of public opinion is what matters, and we need to we need to be aware of what the need, where the gap is, and how can we fill that gap. Of course, it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It needs to be done in a way that falls within the culture of safety, the safety things, those safe operations that we've done, for fighting house fires, for fighting structure fires, simple things as putting on our seatbelts in a rig during response. This is culture of safety stuff and so we can build a new paradigm within the culture of safety, but we have to accept the fact that we need to take a step forward into the gap here. The police did this. The police did it great. The police paradigm is to kind of stop the killing, get in there and kill the bad guy. Don't wait for specialized teams. Don't wait for SWAT. Let's get the first officer that arrives. His job is to go get the bad guy, and that really was a change for them. It was a paradigm shift after Columbine. I'll talk a little bit about that, about what happened in Columbine and what drove paradigm shift for the police. And our police brethren, we should really be applauded, because very, very quickly they accepted risk. The average patrol officer had nothing to do with this in the 1990s. Now that's the one who stops the killing, and they've accepted the risk that is inherent with going right to the bad guy and stopping the killing.
I remember watching on TV Columbine live. Of course, CNN was live watching. They had the aerial helicopters, and you're exactly right. I mean, I remember the police were just staying outside, and I guess they were waiting for their special SWAT teams to go in. And
that's exactly right.
It was hours, wasn't it? And they just continued to kill inside the building.
Yep. But for 45 minutes, they had the run of that building. The SWAT teams were there, and just in a typical kind of the response. I'm not critical of what happened in Columbine, because they didn't know any better at the time. What's interesting about Columbine is it's actually considered to be a tactical success. It actually went down exactly like it was supposed to from the paradigm at the time, and you look back on that and you go, what do you mean that was a success? 20 plus kids died, and 12 kids died, and several others were injured, and how could that be a success? But it was. I mean, it went tactically exactly like it was supposed to. So I think they learned a lot. The police did, and I applaud them for how quickly they changed, how quickly they accepted some risk, how quickly they accepted it in a way that with mitigated risk, in the police culture of safety, which is a little different than ours. But they've moved forward, and to a certain extent have left us behind. And so now it's time for fire and rescue to really step into the gap.
Yeah, I know the police have really changed their approach to all this. And isn't there something called the 3 Fs or something like that? Isn't that their mantra now with this?
I'm not familiar with that term, but
okay, I thought it was find, fix, and finish or something like that.
Yes, yeah. There's lots of little mnemonics. That's not one I'd heard. I like that though.
I guess that's a Memphis thing then.
Yeah, it may be, and but the paradigm is it is this: stop the killing. The primacy of the police paradigm is to stop the killing, and they need to get in there. Whether they make the bad guy, the bad guy kills himself, the bad guy locks himself in a closet, they shoot the bad guy puts his weapon in. Whatever happens, stop the killing. That's the police paradigm, and that's an important. And that flows very nicely into our paradigm, right? Because if the police are all about stopping the killing, we should be about stopping the dying. Because even though the killing is stopped, there is still dying going on in the building as people bleed to death, as people can't breathe, as they're dying from their injuries. And that's where we come in. And our paradigm needs to revolve around working with the police to rapidly deploy into areas that are not completely secure. They're clear, which means there's no immediate danger, but they haven't been cleared and checked and double-checked and triple-checked like we've waited for in the past. So it's not seen safe, but it's seen clear. And our paradigm needs to be stop the dying. One of the things in which I've talked across the United States and actually internationally on this topic, and so I've heard a lot of arguments against this, and I love the fire service, and I love the crusty old battalion chief that's been doing it for 40 years, because that's the guy I want to try to convince. And so you hear the wait, but what about this? We can't do that because of this, and I'm going to talk about that. I'll go into each one of the common arguments that I get from fire and rescue personnel that say we can't do this because, and I'll show you from a data-driven perspective why that argument there's fallacy in every one of those arguments. This is something that we should be doing.
You know, when you talk about this, I remember reading just not too long ago in the newspapers that the TSA agent who got shot out in Los Angeles airport, LAX, he laid there for quite a while and actually bled to death. Is that? Did you see some of those headlines like that?
Yeah, there's a little more to that than that was a bit of sensationalism from the LA Times, I think. But there's some truth to that, and there's also some sensationalism. But yes, it did take a while for them to get to him. He had unsurvivable injuries, and if they had been standing there right next to him, he wouldn't have survived. But it does underlie the problem, though.
Well, I did hear. No, well, let's go. Let me use a different analogy. I understand one of the teachers who got shot at Columbine actually was alive for quite a while, like 3 hours or something like that.
Absolutely. Long enough for them to put a sign up in the window that says that the police could see from outside. They had a sign in the window that said, "One bleeding to death in this room." And no one came. Yeah, absolutely. Over 3 hours. It was Coach Sanders and had a survivable wound, and he died. He bled out over 3 hours. Absolutely.
That just is unconscionable, and I can see why we're starting to shift to these new paradigms. And how would we do something like this? Is there a new approach to all this type of stuff then?
Well, I'll talk about that in my talk, and I'm going to specifically concentrate on what we've done here in Arlington County, which is the Rescue Task Force model, Rescue Task Force being a NIMS compliant term. And we'll talk about how we have skinned the cat. There's more than one way to skin the cat, and I'll touch on some of the other models like the 3-ECHO model out in Minnesota and the warm zone or the warm corridor model that's being done out in Oregon. So we'll touch on some of the other models, but mostly we're going to concentrate on Rescue Task Force because that's the one that we do here in Arlington. But yes, I mean it's a matter of integrated, coordinated work with our police brethren. That's the bottom line. It's not running into the building willy-nilly. We don't do that in a fire, so why would we do it here? It is coordination and training. It's what I like to call the key to all of this, and to all the naysayers out there, the key to everything in our culture of safety is training, tactics, and equipment. If we have the right training, the right tactics, and the right equipment, then we're going to go in as safest way possible.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Smith. This has been very enlightening, and I know your lecture is going to be just fact-filled and full of information that those that attend are going to take back and be able to use in their departments, because this is a new phenomenon. This is a new shift. This is a big paradigm shift for the fire service, because we've been so used to sitting in the staging area and waiting for everything to be cleared. And I know there are those naysayers out there, but as you will demonstrate, the data definitely shows early intervention helps a whole lot. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to sign off, and I want to encourage you to register for Fire Rescue Mid this year. You can go to www.iafc.org/FRM and register. And it's going to be an exciting time. You're going to have many of your counterparts and peers from all over the country. These are chief fire officers who are also involved in EMS and fire departments, and it's an excellent opportunity to network, learn information, share ideas, and take some valuable information back to your departments. Dr. Smith, thank you for being here with us today. This has been truly enlightening, and I hope to see you very shortly in Arlington, Virginia. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you.